Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, Bill, you've been in Vegas this is like your Vegas residency. You're playing 5 nights a week
Yeah.
at the Trop. How's it going over there?
Day 5 or 6. I don't know what day of the week it is. I don't know what time of day it is. I don't know if there's sunlight or darkness outside, and I barely know your name or my name. Other than that, John, everything's splendid, pal.
It's going great. You've got one more. You got the NBA Cup Finals, which we're going to talk about in just a second. That's going to go off tonight. Later in the show, we're going to talk about the Nuggets. Remember them? One of the best wins of the season last night. We'll get into the Nuggets. We'll also discuss the Sixers, who also won, but is their season already over? We'll do some overreactions, as we tend to do on Tuesdays. Ton of stuff in this show. We'll do team of the night, and then we'll give our predictions on who will win tonight's NBA Cup final. But first, we got to preview that final. Number one in the East, the Bucks, against number one in the West, Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City, Bill, winners of 9 of their last 11. Bucks winners of 12 of their last 15. A ton to get into here. I'm excited about this. Styles make fights. So my first question for you is, did we undersell the Bucks? Because early in the season, they dug a huge hole, and now they're just cruising. They're almost top 10 in both offense and defense. They're 11th in offense and 13th in defense. They're rolling.
Okay, so I came armed with information to just push ever so gently back on the Milwaukee enthusiasm. And I'm not saying that it's not legitimate. I just don't know that we know. So I'm going to go a little further back because they were on that brutal losing streak. I think they won their opening game, then they lost a bunch in a row. The sky was falling. Everything was awful. It was darkness everywhere. Since then, over those last 18 games, they're 13-5. Over that same stretch, they're basically 11th in offensive rating, 11th in defensive rating, 10th in net rating, similar to the 15-game mark you just gave us. But they've only played 6 teams that are over 500 over that stretch. So they're 2-4 against over 500 teams, John, and 11-1 against the bad teams. The teams that they beat were Atlanta. The good teams, in air quotes, they beat were Atlanta. Atlanta had also beat them over that stretch, and a Rocket squad that's really good. So for me, this game is so important as a measuring stick for what Milwaukee is because they're in obviously great form. They've got a lot of confidence. Giannis and Dame look like the duo we thought they were going to be. And it would be just nice for them to take the momentum and the high level of play and all the good vibes that come with beating up on a lot of very bad teams, a lot of Charlottes in there over the course of the last few weeks, and just turn that into a win against maybe the best team in the NBA, certainly the second best team in the NBA. So my answer to your question, all that to say this, I'm not there yet. I want to see them do better against good basketball teams. You can only play who's in front of you, but a lot of the good stuff has come from beating up on the teams you're supposed to beat if you're Milwaukee.
Yeah, unfortunately for them, the team that's in front of them, as you mentioned, is one of the best teams in the NBA, if not the best team in the NBA, 8th in offense, 1st in defense. Bill, what we talked about earlier this week, yesterday on this show, it's only Tuesday, Bill. Let's not get crazy.
Like you're in Vegas.
Yeah, all of a sudden I've forgotten what time it is. We talked about this on yesterday's show, which is that the Bucks finally surrounded Giannis with shooting. This is the best shooting team that he's had as a supporting cast in quite some time. They're 3rd in three-point percentage. Now, they're only 15th in three-point attempts, but they knock down what they throw up. The problem here, Bill, is that Oklahoma City, take a guess who's number 1 in defending the 3 in the NBA. So tonight, that's a tough matchup. Yeah, think long and hard on this one. It's a tough matchup for the Bucks, but conversely, as I was looking at this, I'm like, man, what the Bucks do well. Obviously, Oklahoma City is really going to try to take that away, and they're excellent at guarding the perimeter. My one question here, though, and where I think every team is vulnerable, but certainly Oklahoma City, who guards Giannis? Oklahoma City has an awesome defense, but their one problem outside of Isaiah Hartenstein is size.
So yeah, it's a great point. By the way, Giannis is playing absolutely at an MVP level. The problem is he's got a couple guys playing at a higher MVP level this year, and Joker and SGA and maybe some others. And so I'm not sure how much folks have noticed his numbers this season relative to the numbers in the MVPs that he won. I mean, he's been amazing. He was so in that game that they played against the Hawks it was one of those games, John, where he looked unstoppable. And I think the answer to your question for OKC, who guards him, is I think the question everyone's going to face and has faced with Giannis. It's everyone almost, and it's and no one. I mean, I guess Lou Dort, I suppose Jalen Williams will be thrown on him. You mentioned Hartenstein, I guess, as a rim protector. They do switch everything. I'm not sure anyone guards Giannis continuously throughout the game and successfully, but that's sort of true for most teams in the NBA when they go up against this guy.
My suspicion is they probably throw Dort at Dame. But then, yeah, after that, you're looking at some combination of Jalen Williams, who's 6'5", Kason Wallace,
Right.
who's been awesome this season, but he's 6'4", and then Hartenstein, who is obviously a much bigger body. But are you gonna, are you thrilled with having Hartenstein pulled away from the basket on the perimeter where Giannis usually loads up as
No.
he's going downhill at 1,000 miles an hour towards the basket? These are all imperfect answers.
Yeah, so I mean, you're right. There's going to be a size disadvantage. I mean, Hardenstein, maybe if he's in the position, can be a secondary help defender and kind of protect the rim
Yeah.
a little bit. That I mean, and to your point, so the thing about the three-point shooting is so critical, and I want to circle back to that a little bit because this is also a model that the Doc Rivers teams have had with the Clippers, have had with the Sixers. They have taken fewer three-point shots than most really competitive teams in this era, but they've always made a lot of them. And so it's sort of how you want to look at it. Some would argue that Doc doesn't have his team shoot the three enough. Probably my inclination, but there's certainly smart people who have said, well, he just has his teams take good looks, and that's why the percentage is so high. So part of the answer, too, here is if you don't have a good answer for Giannis, and it's an if, those shooters from the Bucks are on today, it becomes a pretty good matchup for Milwaukee against our really, really good Thunder team. They're not the favorite, obviously, but there's a world where you could see Giannis feeling unguardable and doing the things he's been doing, and Dame looking comfortable, and the role players fitting in, and having a competitive basketball game against, again, a team in the Thunder that literally do every single thing well and are, as you said and I said, the best or second best team in the league.
Yeah, I mean, Giannis is a problem for everybody, right? Last time these two teams met was last March. He gave them 30 and 19 rebounds. Like, it's just one of those situations where there's no good answer here. Conversely, on the other side, there's really no good answer for SGA either. He's been playing at an MVP level as well. I think that if the Bucks had their druthers, they'd like to throw Andre Jackson Jr. at him, but how much can you get away? Like, what's your mileage on him? Because he's an interesting dude. He's a big body, 6'6" with a 6'9", almost 6'10" wingspan, Bill. And I think that he could be somewhat of an answer. I mean, like, nobody's going to stop SGA. We saw what happened. The Houston Rockets have the second best defense in the NBA. And in the last game, SGA started out slow against them and then absolutely torched them in the second half.
It was
like cool and calm, and like the shot wasn't. Yeah. So there's no answer here in the same way that there's no answer with Giannis. But what's your mileage on Andre Jackson Jr.?
Yeah, Jackson Jr. So this is my first time really seeing him in person. He's long, he's athletic, he's impressive, he's electric, and he's really, really raw. And he's the kind of guy that you like the minutes that he's out there, but I wouldn't want him playing a whole bunch of minutes. And I don't know that if he's on the floor for big chunks of time, whatever he can do against SGA, if it benefits that Bucks team the way that it needs to. He is, for me, 20 minutes a game, throw him out there, get some electricity, but I don't
use up his fouls.
I guess my mileage is limited. Yeah. I mean, also, here's the thing. You're going to have to seed that Giannis is going to do Giannis things against this OKC team. That's just the reality. And you're going to have to seed that SGA is going to do SGA things against this Milwaukee team. I think in a lot of ways it's going to be the secondary guy, like who steps up, and there's no Chet Holmgren, so that's a huge disadvantage for the Thunder. But just if Damian Lillard is the third best player on the floor tonight, again, you start to swing me toward maybe believing the Bucks can be more competitive than I would have argued 3 or 4 weeks ago when I was one of the people screaming, "Oh, the sky is falling in Milwaukee."
Yeah, everybody in Milwaukee thanking you for that. The reverse jinx from the BTA show.
They loved it.
One more thing that I'm interested in here. What kind of game do you think we're going to get? Because I mentioned styles make fights, right? In Oklahoma City, 4th youngest team in the NBA, 10th in pace, by far first in points off turnovers. They love to get out and run and score off of turnovers. And then the Bucks, on the other end, they're the oldest team in the NBA. They're 16th in pace, which is actually higher than I expected them to be. And Bill, in terms of average time to shoot the ball, they are 26 in the NBA. They love to take their time. I think they'd love to slow this thing down and muck it up. Whereas with Oklahoma City, we already know they like to go.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a plotting basketball game. It's going to be, ever since we started working together, these John Gonzalez specials pop up everywhere. Like, you love those 95, 89 slugfest. The answer is I don't know, because I saw with the Thunder and the Rockets basketball in the first half and Thunder's basketball in the second half. And the fact that Oklahoma City, despite being a young team, was able to impose not just its will, but the way that it wanted to play basketball and really push through the Rockets' pullman of the mud and making it a defensive battle. The fact that the Thunder just did away with that and had that offensive explosion in the second half, I mean, there's reason to think that they can certainly make this game the way they want it to be. They can get out and go. They can play fast. try to turn over the Bucks, make the Bucks uncomfortable, maybe rush a little bit. But it's a veteran Milwaukee team and easy to forget. Not Dame, but Giannis and Middleton and some of these guys have won a championship before. So maybe it's a similar first half. Milwaukee is able to sort of set the tone, and we see whether or not the Thunder, like they did against the Rockets, can flip the script a little bit and impose their will in the back parts of the game.
I'm looking forward to this one. I'm hoping we're going to get a good game. And also there's money on the line here, not just a banner, not just the bragging rights with the NBA Cup final. The winner gets $500,000 per player. So extra motivation for the Bucks and Oklahoma City. We're going to take a quick break. And then on the other side, we're going to talk about a team that I think, Bill, we might have maybe not so much forgotten about as underestimated. The Denver Nuggets got a big win in Sacramento, and one of the most entertaining games I've watched maybe this entire season. We'll discuss that next. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. Just a reminder, you can get us wherever you find your favorite podcast. Please download, subscribe, leave a review. And if you're listening on Spotify, if you look below the play button on the Spotify app in full screen mode, you can tell us what you think of the show or leave us a question. Bill, last night, Nuggets Kings. I tune in early. Nuggets are absolutely blowing them out. I think they were up by 23 on the Kings in Sacramento. I tune out for a little bit. I'm surfing around. I come back. The Kings are in this game. I don't know if you caught this, but it was one of the most entertaining finishes of the season. Back and forth last minute, where in the last minute, he had a massive three by De'Aaron Fox, and then Joker responded with his first three of the night. He went for a 20-point triple-double, and then DeMar DeRozan threw down a ferocious dunk, and then Jamal Murray ended up winning it on a game-winning jumper at the foul line, working that two-man Joker game. So big win for them. They improved to 14-10. And so I guess my question is, like, we've been sort of back and forth on the Nuggets. And as I'm watching this game last night and I see them pick up this really critical 1-point win where now they're in 5th place in the Western Conference and they're just 2 games back of Dallas and Houston for that 3-4 spot. Like, did we sleep on the Nuggets here a little bit?
Not if you watch Beyond the Arc, because this guy, double thumbs, yours truly, if you remember several times, John said, they had my analysis was really deep too. They have Joker. They're going to be just fine. Look, Jamal Murray wasn't amazing over the course of that game, but he was really good in that one moment that won that basketball game. And so it's the same story it's always been. They have the best player on the face of the earth by a wide margin. They have a couple guys they pay like superstars in Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., and they need those guys to play at a relatively high level. We've seen in the past Jamal Murray, either through injury or just not playing particularly well, not be impactful in the regular season, get to the postseason, go to a different level, and Denver goes to another level. And I think it's the same answer. Are they Oklahoma City? No. Nobody in the West is. But other than that, I like Denver as much as anybody, and I still think, as I've said a few times, that 2 or 3, 4 certainly is an easy predictive outcome for what Denver can be this year, because when you have Nikola Jokic, good things are going to happen. You're going to win games like this where maybe it shouldn't be this close, but he'll find a way to win. And if other guys start kicking in, all the better.
Late game, especially after being up 23, then you blow the lead, then the Kings have momentum. They're on their home floor. I thought it was cooked. And then everything you just said is exactly right. If you have the best player in the world, you've got a shot. And then, like, here come in the final couple of minutes, the Nuggets to respond to, I didn't think they were going to get up off the mat at all. And the way they did it too was kind of surprising. There was I mentioned the DeMar DeRozan, like, ferocious dunk in the final minute of the game. And I was listening to on League Pass, the Sacramento broadcast, and they said, oh, this is the way that the Kings want to play. They're going to want to go faster because Joker doesn't want to run. They don't want to run. And I went and looked at the pace, because I guess, like, in theory, you watch Joker push the ball up when he's doing his point Joker thing, and it does look like it's kind of slow, but it's not. They're 5th in pace. It kind of blew me away. I think, like, it surprised the Kings broadcasters, and it surprised me a little bit too that, yes, he looks like he's moving in slow motion, but the offense is not.
Yeah, everything about Joker and his team is deceptive. I mean, he looks, when you glance at him, like your local bowling league runner-up, right? Not even the champion, just the king of Budweiser takedowns and pretty good at rolling the pins. Right. They are a deceptive team. And by the way, again, go back to Jamal Murray. Not always great in the regular season, has never been an all-star, an all-NBA player, but he plays at a deceptively high level when you get to the playoffs. And Michael Porter Jr. just disappears for not even games. He disappears for weeks. But then he'll have these moments and these stretches where, not really in the playoffs, where he's one of the best shooters in the NBA. So for me, you're right. Denver is deceptively dangerous in ways that maybe sometimes their numbers or their performances don't show. Last night's game, not a big surprise for me on the Denver side. I think it is a backbreaker for the Sacramento Kings because they have been underwhelming and they have underperformed. And those are the kind of games, to what you just said, where you need to win those games. You need to create a little momentum. You need to take advantage of the fact that a team that was a champion a couple years ago basically coughed up a big lead, and you're at home if you're the Kings, and you have this chance. DeRozan and De'Aaron Fox, it felt like with those plays at the end, like, oh, it's working, this duo's working. It took a little longer than it normally does, but they're in the groove, and then they lose again. To me, it misses the opportunity to win a game against a pretty good team, and certainly a star-studded team that maybe creates some vibes and some confidence for a King squad that, at least when you look at the standings, it already feels like a what could have been afterthought of a basketball team right now.
Yeah, that was a bummer for them. They are well out of the play-in right now, 2.5 games behind the Lakers, who are in that 10 spot. They're a half game back of the Spurs, who are just 500. I mean, yeah, they've had some games this year where you would think, okay, now this is maybe where the Kings get going here a little bit. But for the Nuggets, I think that's one of those wins where maybe that gets them moving a little bit. And they have been a team where deceptive is a good way to put how they play, but it's also kind of to the eye test too, right? Where they have been a little deceptive in terms of their production this season. You see the teams there in the Western Conference, Bill. I think we're both in agreement that the Thunder are the best team in the West. After that, though, we've seen a lot of movement in that 2, 3, 4 spot. Now you've got the Nuggets in the 5. Who do you like in that grouping there between the Grizzlies, the Rockets, the Mavericks, and the Nuggets? You even throw in the Suns, who would be in the playoffs proper if they started right now.
Yeah, if Kevin Durant plays every game this year based on what he's done in the games that he's been in, the Suns are the 2 or 3 seed. I think my answer is probably in order. It's probably the Thunder and then the Nuggets or the Mavs and then the Grizzlies are the 4. And I'm going to kick your Rockets, your beloved Houston team, one of the 4 teams you've adopted, probably down to that 6th slot. Because I do think they're going to come back to earth a little bit, John. I know we've discussed this a lot. They're awesome. They're young. They're ahead of schedule. They don't play offense at a high level. And as great as their defense is and as exciting
or
as
any level
is, I know I like points, and so do teams that eventually sort of make their way to the top of most of these standings in the East or West. So I think the Rockets will fall back a little bit, but you have convinced me they're a playoff level team and they're a good team. I think what you're asking is the reminder that the West is absolutely as good as we thought it was. It just got off to, collectively outside of Oklahoma City, a weirdly late start, but a lot of these teams are reminding us why we thought the Western Conference was going to be brutal this year. Yeah,
I mean, you could really put any of those teams in a grab bag and pick them out and tell me that this is the order. I think what you're saying about the Rockets is right. They have been one of the worst shooting teams in the NBA this season. I'm just a believer in their defense. I think I'd probably pick the Grizzlies 2, and then some order of Mavericks, Nuggets 3, 4. And then, I guess the Rockets would be dropped down into that 5, 6 spot with the Suns, just because with the Suns, you don't know what you're going to get out of Kevin Durant. And then the Rockets, we've seen it. I mean, they just look defensively, they can beat you in a lot of different ways, but they, in addition to being a horrendous shooting team, they don't have a closer. We've discussed this. I mean, you go through their roster, right, and it's nights they've gotten away with it. Some nights Jalen Green will catch fire, or Fred VanVleet will catch fire, or Alperen and Şengün will be knocking down shots, but it's not consistent, and it's something that I think is going to come back to haunt them, especially when the teams that are ahead of them, the Grizzlies have Ja, and the Mavs have Luka and Kyrie, and the Nuggets, of course, have the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic, and then the Suns if KD's ever out there. So that definitely puts them at a disadvantage. One more Nugget thing I want to run past you. Go ahead.
Can we talk more about the Suns? Like, I think we don't talk enough and the greater. He's Kevin Durant. He is maybe the best scorer in the history of the sport. And it is easy to lose track of what he has done with Phoenix because he's missed a big chunk of time. And that's why the Suns are in that 6th spot. When he plays, that team has only lost a couple basketball games. And it's not as if we're talking 4-2. I mean, it's a big enough sample size when he is out there. The Suns are a top 2 or 3 team over an 82-game season if he averages out to 65 games. Or 70 games played. He's probably not going to, but let's not lose track of the fact that Kevin Durant is one of the marquee stars in the NBA. He's one of the greatest players in the history of the sport. And when he has played this year, this Phoenix team is outstanding. And when he doesn't, they're the Wizards. And it is a reminder of that guy's greatness might not be noticed as much because of shiny new things like Houston and the Thunder. but it's still real and it's still impactful. And if Kevin Durant can play enough games that the Suns miss the play-in, and it's an and he's healthy for the playoffs, that becomes the kind of team that can make a deep run that I think nobody's talking about. That is how ridiculous his impact has been when he's played this year.
It really is just like such a different team when he plays and when he doesn't. I mean, to call them the Wizards without him is kind of right. I mean, and then all of a sudden with him, they can challenge anybody in the Western Conference. By the way, they have the exact same record as two other teams, Bill, that we've discussed on the show. The Minnesota Timberwolves are also 14-11. They've been ascendant. And then the Warriors have been dropping like a stone during this stretch of their season, although they just traded for Dennis Schroder. So like that grouping there, that's huge. Who gets that 6th seed and is in the playoffs proper, as opposed to who ends up in the 7-8 spot and has to come out of the play-in? There's going to be 2 really good teams, 3 really good teams in that grouping where you're like, man, they could have been a playoff team.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is I think the Suns are going to be well, if Durant's healthy enough. Put the Suns in 5 for me. Are the Rockets good enough to hold off some of those teams that you mentioned? And the answer might be yes, because last year, really, if you go back to last year, John, I'm trying to remember when they got really hot at the end, January, February, they made this amazing push as a bad team to almost being a play-in team. Over that stretch, their record is amazing. So maybe your Rockets, your defensive-minded, Ime Udoka-inspired, let's hold the other team to 89 points, we'll score 93, Houston Rockets are capable and good enough to hold off some of those teams. And I think if they do, if they come down to a race where they're fighting for that 6th spot and they hold off some teams that have star players and more expectations like the Timberwolves, or a team like obviously the Warriors that have Steph, that I think simulates pressure basketball in a way that, and again, they get in the playoffs obviously if they're the 6th seed, but I think that also speeds up the process of getting them to a real competitive level in a year or 2.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated to see what's going to happen with this grouping. I'm still hopeful about the Warriors, by the way. They're a really good defense, and they have Steph Curry, and they just made a move. I think it's just a hard part of their schedule, but all of these teams are really good. We're going to take a quick break, and then on the other side, we're going to talk about a team that is not really good, although they won a basketball game last night, the Philadelphia 76ers, who are cursed, but are they cooked? We'll discuss that next. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John Gonzalez and our NBA insider Bill Ryder live from Las Vegas, getting ready for tonight's NBA Cup final. Bill, we should talk about a team that has not played very well this season and has also been bitten by the injury bug, the Philadelphia 76ers. They did win a game last night. They improved to 8-16, which puts them just a game and a half out of the play-in, which is such a massive indictment of the very dumb Eastern Conference, and I don't even know what to do with it. But PG and Maxey combined for 73 points, and we can get into what we think this team is capable of in a second. I want to talk about just the curse factor here, because last weekend, Embiid fractured his sinus. He's going to have further evaluations in 1 week. And then Jared McCain, who has been the lone bright spot in a very dark year for them, he ends up hurting his knee. He's got a meniscus tear. He's out indefinitely because he's going to need surgery. This situation with Embiid, though, is really, really troubling because it's a total freak injury. There haven't been many facial fracture injuries in the NBA. In a study over 34 years, there were 15 orbital bone injuries and 1 sinus fracture. Embiid alone has 2 orbital bone injuries in 9 years and 1 sinus fracture. And I went and looked, Bill, depending on the severity of this thing, hopefully it's not this. Hopefully it's something that he can play with a mask. But there are scenarios here where he could miss a month or more, or if he needs surgery, that could be it for him. So let's just start here. This has to be one of the most cursed seasons in recent memory.
Well, John, let me I'm on this Sixers roller coaster with you, okay? And I know we're doing overreactions later. One of my overreactions was going to be there's going to be highs and lows, and I'm just going to overreact and say we're on a high. They're winning some games. They've got an easy one next. We got Paul George and Tyrese Maxey just taking over. I mean, curse, sure, but at least the basketball gods have put you into this season at a time when every single team in the East, outside of 2.5 of them, are garbage so far. Basically, stretches of most of these teams, outside of Boston and the Cavs and maybe Milwaukee, being beatable. So, yeah, you're cursed, but I think you guys can push through it. Like a Disney story, right? You overcome the curse. You find – I'm back to Sixers optimism for you. I'm going to go back and forth all season long.
Can I just – Can I just point out that, yes, they did win a game last night, and yes, they do have another easy one coming up on Friday, but it's the same team. They can't play the Hornets every night. They played them last night, and they're playing them on Friday. But I believe of their 8 wins, the 3 of them are against Charlotte. So it's not, awfully encouraging to me. I wanted, yes, it's worth laughing about. Bill, they're 12th in defense. They've actually been okay on the defensive end. They're 27th in offensive rating. And obviously a lot of that traces back to not having Joel Embiid. PG, he had his best shooting season last year with the Clippers, both from the field and from 3. He's been injured, but the returns on him so far, he's been super streaky. He was great last night, but the shooting for him, not nearly as good as what it was with the Clippers last year. And then Maxey also hasn't taken that step forward where you really want him to fill that void where, okay, no Embiid, PG has been only intermittently available. Now McCain is out. I'm going to be the guy, and he hasn't really proven to be the guy by himself.
I think the bigger problem for the Sixers, yes, have they been snake bit with incredibly bad luck, curse, or whatever you want to call it? Yes, it's awful. I think the interesting component about your team, John, is that even though they are basically it's basically Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey and a bunch of new guys that were put together with Paul George being the main person, it's not a huge window. It's not a very wide window for a team that was just totally reconstructed. And so I don't think you have the sands to go through the hourglass that are happening right now, because Joel Embiid is hurt all the time, and without freak fractures in his face, right, when he's constantly injured. And so it feels like the opportunity threshold for things to go well for the Sixers, who have a top 3 or 4 player, are much smaller than even Kevin Durant, who's older, or Giannis Antetokounmpo, or Joker, or these other guys that are at that level. Paul George, as you noted, has had a bit of a come down from what was last year, to be fair to the Clippers, probably the best season of his career. But he's no spring chicken, and he's not a guy that's been an Iron Man over the course of his career. And Tyrese Maxey, I mean, he's really, really young, but at a certain point, you want him to develop and evolve in a way, because he's playing winning, meaningful basketball, that he can take the step you're talking about. So yeah, they're cursed in this season. I think the bigger problem with the curse is I just don't know how many seasons you're going to get where Joel Embiid can play, and you cannot afford to have him out with injuries that have nothing to do with what usually puts him on the sideline. It is awful luck. And Daryl Morey, who runs basketball ops, has a long contract. I think he is smart enough not to fire Nick Nurse. So I don't think you're talking pressure on the front office and the coaching staff. They certainly suggest that's not the case, but they don't have a 3 or 4 year timeline, or a 2. I'm not even sure they have a 3 year timeline. And that makes this really problematic if you want to see Joel Embiid eventually win in Philadelphia.
I don't think there's pressure on the coach of the front office either, except for what do they do here? Because they're a game and a half out of that play, and fine, whatever. Again, it's the Eastern Conference. It's really ugly, but and obviously they're going to have to wait to figure out, and maybe they already know and they're waiting to just tell us what the deal is with Joel Embiid, but how soon can Joel Embiid return this season from this latest injury? And then where are they in the standings before the trade deadline? And should they go out and get somebody? Because if you had asked me at the beginning of the season, are the Sixers going to make a move and add a piece or 2 before the deadline, I would have told you 100% yes, that's definitely going to happen. Now, Bill, I don't know, because do they keep their powder dry? Does it all, how close are they within striking distance of being a play-in team? How many games do you think you can get out of Joel Embiid, who, by the way, Bill, when Joel Embiid misses Friday's game against the Hornets, who's the only team evidently that the Sixers can beat in the NBA, when he misses that game on Friday, he will be eliminated from postseason award contention and consideration. That's the kind of season that he's been going through.
Yeah, you and I had this conversation about what is a reasonable expectation for the Sixers now, and you teased this in the show earlier. Is they're cursed? Is the season over? I think it comes down to how you assess the Cleveland Cavaliers, because I don't think it's realistic based on everything we know about what's going on. And they're only, 4 or 5 games back? I think 4 of the 60. They're not getting to the top 6. I think it's reasonable to suggest that, despite my fake optimism, because I think it's funny about the Sixers, that their best case scenario is a play-in situation. Wherever it is, 7, 8, 9, 10 in that situation. They're not beating the Boston Celtics. We can put that aside. That's an obvious thing. I know it's unlikely we're going to have a healthy Joel Embiid and a healthy Paul George and at the end of the year, because we just haven't seen that very much, mostly because of Embiid, but PG too. But let's just presume that they can sort of tread water. I think that they can beat anybody in a 7-game series with the team they were supposed to have, I think, outside of the top 2 teams in the East. I think they could beat – you had a rematch of last year's showdown with the Knicks. The Knicks, to me, have some weaknesses, and you get to the Magic and other teams. I think Cleveland's amazing. I just think sometimes we can all be captives of the moment. I'm just not entirely sure if Philly got to be Philly in April and had a matchup against Cleveland that you wouldn't see something. They almost beat the Knicks last year. And so I still think there's a world where there's some like long shot of hope, but you have to be in the play and then you have to have the Cavs finish in the right place relative to where you finish. I don't think the season's over, but I think you're threading a needle now that is threadable, but it is a very, very small hole to try to get through.
So if I hear you correctly, if everything goes right for the Sixers, then they should be fine. And if I know of any team in the NBA and really sports where everything tends to break their way, it's the Sixers. So I take it all back. Everything's going to be fine. Right. Just cross your fingers and your toes. We're going to take a quick break. And then on the other side, we're going to do what we like to do on a Tuesday, some overreactions, including, Bill, I'm going to give you the real winner from the Dennis Schroder trade to the Golden State Warriors. That's coming up on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. A reminder, you can also find us on YouTube at Beyond the Arc CBS. Please hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. Hit the little bell symbol. You'll get notified when we go live. We are usually live on YouTube Monday through Friday at noon Eastern. We will also be live tonight after the NBA Cup final. Bill won't be there. Bill will be working. But Sam Quinn will join me, so come and join us after the NBA Cup final, and we'll do a little post-game reaction. We're going to do overreactions now, as we tend to do on Tuesday. Bill, I'm going to go first. I'm going to give you one. We were so wrong about Bronny James. He has arrived. We didn't talk about this. He had 30 points in 25 minutes last week in his road debut. We finally got him to go on the road and play for the G League team against the Suns G League team. Real quick, LeBron was asked about it last week, and here's what he had to say about his son scoring 30 points in 25 minutes.
It's just great to see him getting back into the flow, getting back to his game, and getting back to him just playing free and going out and just playing the game he loves and know how to play. So I love his aggressiveness. He was aggressive from the beginning in both games all the way up into the end. So and he did it in short minutes, on both sides of the floor.
I know you're baiting me to. Yeah, you're baiting me to put down Bronny James because I feel bad about this young guy and I like him. But yeah, what did LeBron say? I like seeing him play free, real free. What is he, 6 of 20? I mean, there was a lot of
jacking him up.
There were some bad shots. Oh my God. So here's the thing. I know you're being sarcastic, and I love your overreaction that Bronny is back. Even when he scores a bunch of points, he doesn't look very good. And I'm glad that he's playing road games, and I want it to work. The real takeaway is, look, it's a nice statistical performance. It is good that he's playing road games, and it's a reminder you have to play in the G League in all of the games, because putting up a bunch of points, having some performances where you can point to something, having some confidence, remembering you're good at basketball relative to the rest of the world, not feeling like you're completely overwhelmed. Those are really impressive moments, and he needs to be in the G League. But also because he's a G League player right now, and maybe forever, but certainly right now. So I'm happy for Bronny. It's great, but I mean, I guess I'm not quite yet to get with you on the overreaction. He's there, baby. He's the missing piece, and once he gets his sea legs, he's going to be the catalyst for the Lakers in 2024-25. I'm not quite there with you yet, Mr. Gonzalez.
The Lakers have been talking about adding a piece at the trade deadline. Just promote Bronny James, and you're there already. Right. You mentioned he does need to be in the G League, and there is reporting that he will appear in the G League showcase later this week in Orlando. Every G League team is guaranteed at least 2 games in front of the entire, basically every team in the NBA sends executives and scouts there to scout these guys. So Bronny James is going to play more road games. Absolutely amazing. All right, Overreaction Tuesday, you continue.
I think the Pistons are a really good Eastern Conference team, which is say like 3, 4, 5, 6 games under 500. But they're, they're scrappy, and they're, even when they lose, which they did not last night, they're a tough out, and that's a nice win against the Heat. And we're 2 or 3 years behind schedule, where this team that has been rebuilding for what feels like 15 years should have been to this point, but sort of quietly under the radar, they're an interesting basketball team, and they're winning some games that matter. And by Eastern Conference standards, they're almost okay or even good by how weak the East is.
I thought they were going to cough up that game last night, and they didn't. You have to learn how to win. And by the way, you know that I'm a big Amin Thompson fan. I was also previously an Asar Thompson fan, but last year, for whatever reason, Monty stuck him on the bench. And now all of a sudden JB comes in and, oh, look at this. Both twins can play. I think that they've got something there with this young core between Cade and Ivy and now potentially Asar. Yeah, I'm with you. They're a fun watch. They didn't cough up that game last night. I think that they could be an interesting team. Look, they're the 10 seed right now, which would be a win for them. That's something, like they're climbing up the East, a bad Eastern Conference, but still they would be in the playoffs. That brings me to one of mine as well, Bill, because the other side of what happened last night is that the Heat lost that game. And I think these two crazy kids need to make up. Jimmy Butler is the Heat, and the Heat are Jimmy Butler. And I know Jimmy wants out. We talked about the trade rumors on this program last week. I think they need to stay together. They need to go to couples counseling. They lost by one. Look, they're 13-11. They're sixth in the Eastern Conference. He was a monster last night, Bill. He had 35 points, 19 rebounds, 10 assists. He also, for good measure, 4 steals, a block. He played 44 minutes. They got crushed in the non-Jimmy minutes. The only reason that the Heat were even in that game was because of Jimmy Butler. And we also talked about the trade value, how big his contract is, how bloated it is. He's 35 years old. I think he has more value to the Heat than he will have to any other team.
I'm going to push back youngly, though. I don't think he wants out yet. I think that's a possible outcome. I think that if he can use these performances to leverage the Heat, then he will. And if he can't, then maybe he does. But I'm with his agent and I'm with the Heat sources I talk to who I think it's undecided. And to your point, Jimmy Butler, and this isn't a cliche, it's not just sports guy talk or just saying what you're supposed to say. He's a competitor. He wants to win. And the Heat made clear to me, and I believe them, that they'll move on from Jimmy Butler if they get the right move, but it has to make the team still competitive. And last night's game, like you just said, it just underscores the Heat certainly need Jimmy Butler. They need him. And so the question becomes, does Jimmy Butler believe again that he is the focal point and that because he's egomanic's the wrong word. He's a big believer in his ability in the moments that matter to win games, even though they didn't win last night. I do think they could need each other. And I think if the Heat can they should have won that game. If they can play better basketball like they have, if they can get themselves to a position, and I've been told this, if they ever get to a spot where they think they can finish in the top 6, they would be much less inclined to trade Jimmy Butler. They believe that if they can avoid the play-in and the crapshoot, the dice game that is the play-in, they think that they have a legitimate chance to make at least a conference finals again, which they've done, 3 of the last 5 years, and they've made 2 finals, and we never really talk about them as a competitor. So I agree. Last night's a reminder that the Heat need Jimmy, and I think they're hopeful that they can win enough games that Jimmy will believe as we get closer to the trade deadline that he's in a pretty good spot and he can go out and get paid next time around. If there is an
top 6 right now,
there's next time.
Top 6 right now, even after losing that game last night. All right, let's do one more each.
All right, you've got a Nets one. So I had Sixers are back, baby, but we already talked about the Sixers. But I just want to reiterate to you, overreaction. Let's go. I already did it, but I just want to lean into your Sixers fandom. But I want to go off your Nets. My overreaction is a reaction to your Nets overreaction.
Okay. All right, well, here we go. So we had the first major trade of the NBA trade season. Dennis Schroder was shipped to Golden State for 3 second-round picks and DeAnthony Melton, right? So I'm thinking about who won this trade between Golden State. I think it's a great fit for Golden State. I think it's great for the Nets because they get a good player off their team. They can tank a little bit. And I'm watching basketball last night, and I go leafing through the box scores, and I found the true winner of this trade was Ben Simmons, Bill. Ben Simmons gets inserted into the starting lineup. Last night, he goes for 10 points, 4 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 steals, and here's the kicker, a season-high 31 minutes. Ben Simmons is back.
So I completely love that take. I do not disagree with it, but I'm going to lean into it and say that if Ben Simmons is the big winner of the trade, then so is Sean Marks. Because what the GM of the Brooklyn Nets really needs is for the Nets to lose games. And if you're relying on Ben Simmons for minutes, you are going to lose basketball games and you're going to collect ping pong balls and you're going to have so Ben Simmons is the big winner, which also makes the Nets front office the big winner because what they wanted from that trade was for these guys to stop playing as well as to stop overachieving, please.
Yeah, well, good news on that. They got throttled by the Cavs last night, so everybody wins except for the Nets, who are trying to lose. Yeah, exactly right. All right, we're going to take a quick break, one more, and then on the other side, we're going to do Team of the Night, and we're going to have our NBA Cup Finals predictions. That's coming your way on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. We'll wrap it up with a little Team of the Night, and then we'll do our NBA Cup Finals prediction here. Team of the Night from last night, Bill.
Look, I'm really impressed by you have to get back into the Brooklyn Nets to losing ways. And they're now at a 3-game losing streak. It's an impressive turnaround from what was a rough start to the season with the wins that they were stacking up. And I know there was some discomfort in the organization. I was there a couple weeks ago. But just give him credit. As you know, even Ben Simmons wasn't 30 whatever minutes, wasn't enough. Good news. They were able to lose another game. And this time they lost by a lot. So you really want to feel like hopelessness. So the team really just starts racking up L. So way to go, Brooklyn Nets. Way to get back to the game plan.
Yeah, they were dangerously close to the play-in, and now they're a half game out of the play-in. Maybe the Sixers can overtake them, but they got absolutely throttled last night. They already got Dennis Schroder off the books. Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, got to get those guys off the books next. Too many good winning players. Just let Ben Simmons cook. Him and Shake Milton can go out there and play basketball for the rest of the season. They'll be fine. Yeah. So my team of the night.
Ben Simmons cook.
Yeah. Let Ben Simmons cook, please. And by the way, contract year for Ben Simmons. We'll see. I can't wait to see what happens with him next year. Mine's an easy one. We talked about it earlier. It's the Nuggets. Huge win for them. Up 23. End up blowing it. Looked like they were going to lose to the Kings, who were desperate for a win as well. And they come back. And now all of a sudden, in the standings in the Western Conference, where, as we've established, Oklahoma City, top of the standings, easily the best team in that conference. Everybody else, 2 through 6, 7, 8, could really be shuffled around. And now the Nuggets are only 2 games back of that 3-4 slot where the Rockets and the Mavs are. They got the Suns right behind them. They got to keep pace. They did that last night. That's a really good professional win. And I thought, we've talked on the show about how Oklahoma City hasn't panicked. Nuggets didn't panic last night.
Yeah, this was my backup option here. This was like number 2 on the ballot. And we've talked before about how Jamal Murray can step up sometimes in playoff games and big games, and we don't see it all the time in the regular season. He had a terrible Olympics. I know it's 1 game in December, but it's nice to see him in a game winner, to sort of have this moment and this opportunity and be like, oh yeah, like in big moments when they really matter and bigger moments when they matter, maybe he's still really reliable. Because if he is, it's a Denver team that becomes like they're supposed to be, an absolute contender, because all that Joker needs is a little bit of help around him. And he got it last night when it mattered most.
All right, tonight, Bill, last one. NBA Cup Finals. You're going to be there. Number 1 team in the East, the Bucks, against the number 1 team in the West, Oklahoma City, in terms of NBA Cup action. Not in the standings proper, but who do you got in tonight's game? Who's going to hoist the cup?
Short and sweet, you and I have gotten a lot of predictions wrong on this show, but we have not gotten them wrong when we've gone with the Thunder. That's been the saving grace. Oklahoma City Thunder. I think it's a closer game than you might otherwise think. I think the Bucks comport themselves very impressively, and they still lose. Give me the Thunder to be champions in year 2 of the NBA Cup.
You know what that means, because you and I have gotten so many wrong. We're due. I'm also on the Thunder tonight. They're just playing really great basketball. SGA has been amazing. They're so good defensively. So many different ways to beat you. Bill, they only have 1 loss since November 20th, and they've won their last 5 by double digits. They're amazing, right? But I'm excited for you to go see that game. Go see that game. Read Bill's story on CBSSports.com afterwards. He'll have all kinds of good stuff for you. And then tonight, come and join us live on YouTube after the NBA Cup Final for post-game reactions. You can find us at Beyond the Arc CBS. Sam Quinn will join me. But for now, for our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, I am John Gonzalez. We thank you all so much for tuning in, everybody, and enjoy the NBA Cup Final tonight.